Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, where we discuss everything in the world of Major League Baseball. As always, I'm Jeremiah.
And my name is Ben.
And we have another division preview for you guys. We're going to talk about the National League West today. And, of course, you know, it's pretty stacked heavy with a lot of pitching. Most notably, we're going to talk about the Dodgers, if they can repeat or not. We're going to talk about the Giants, if they can get back to the playoffs after fixing their bullpen issues. You know, are the Rockies a team on the rise? And we're going to discuss the Diamondbacks and Padres and their possible rebuilding seasons. And then, of course, spring training started, Ben.
It did, yes, last week.
We're getting closer, so we're going to discuss the standings and the Cactus League and the Grapefruit League. And, of course, we're going to discuss, you know, a couple news stories that have occurred in spring training so far. But, of course, we're going to talk about the National League West. And the Dodgers won it last season, 91-71. They look like they practically still have the same team. You know, they re-signed Justin Turner. They traded for Logan Forsythe. They got literally everybody else still there, intact. And, of course, you know, in the pitching rotation, they still got everyone there. They re-signed Rich Hill. Looks like Scott Kazmir looks like he's coming back from injury. Then Julio Urias could be a guy that could be a huge breakout star, not just in LA, but I think in all Major League Baseball. So he can practically be that guy. So they have practically the same team, Ben. I do think that, you know, this team is just stacked on offense or stacked in the pitching rotation. I think this team can win the National League West again.
Yeah, the Dodgers decided to do it a little differently than they have been recently. Instead of just going out and acquiring all the big-name free agents, they decided to keep everyone that they had last year, as they obviously went to the divisional round, the championship round, almost really pushing the Cubs there for a while. And I think that really started with Turner and Kenley Jansen, who they brought back, because they lost, obviously, a couple of years ago, Zach Greinke now, and it was like, oh my God, the Dodgers are going to fall off the cliff. And then they were kind of competing there, then they lost Kershaw, and it's like, well, you and I both said that the Dodgers were done, and then they played really their best baseball without him.
Yeah.
So if they can replicate that same success with Kershaw back in the rotation, I mean, look out for this team this year.
Yeah, look out. And, you know, their projected lineup that I'm looking at here, you can have Logan Forsythe as the leadoff man. Corey Seager, who practically was an MVP candidate as a rookie.
He was a finalist, yeah.
So that should tell you the type of player that he is. You got Justin Turner, who they brought back, who was a major player for this team last season, who had more than 20 home runs. Adrian Gonzalez, you know, he is hurt right now, but, you know, he should be coming back soon. And you got Yasmani Grandal, Yasel Puig, you know, Jock Peterson, and Andrew Toles, who last year was working at a grocery store and then came out of nowhere for the Dodgers in the playoffs. So this lineup looks like it's just practically the same lineup as last year. They didn't do anything. They had addition by bringing back the guys that helped them out last year. So that's the thing. That's the key thing. You know, they didn't go out and get a huge player. The only major trade that this team made was bringing Logan Forsythe in exchange for Jose De Leon, who was regarded as part of the Dodgers' future. But, you know, the Dodgers, they're a team that is ready to win now. And I do think they needed someone to pretty much fit that second base spot. And Logan Forsythe is the type of player that can play anywhere in the diamond, so he's one of those utility players. But, he did have a good season last year with Tampa Bay in a kind of like in a backup role, so to speak, in a utility role, but now he's going to be a full-time starter with the Dodgers. But this pitching rotation, Kershaw, we know about him. He's a stud, probably.
I never heard of him. Who's
you never
that?
heard of it? Clint Kershaw, he's...
No, I've heard of Brandon McCarthy, but not Clayton Kershaw.
Yeah, Brandon McCarthy has a huge social media game. It is on fire.
I mean, there's some famous McCarthys out there, so...
Yeah, and definitely in U.S. history, but
Kershaw is fantastic. We know about him, but the rest of the rotation still shapes up pretty nicely.
Yeah, Clayton Kershaw, we all know about him. He's a stud, probably the best pitcher in baseball. Kenta Maeda, he kind of had an up and down season in his first year in the majors, so I do expect him to be pretty solid for the Dodgers. You got Rich Hill, who started out the year great for Oakland, then got traded to L.A., and he's been a really important part of the rotation for the Dodgers last season until, he got hurt. So they brought him back, and I think he's a great number 3 starter. You got Julio Urias, who I think is going to be the breakout star in this league this year. We saw him, struggling last season. The Dodgers were limiting his innings. But I think Julio Urias is going to be a stud.
I mean, he's only 20 years old. He's got all the potential going for him. He got a little bit of experience, got his feet wet last year in the big leagues, so they're really going to really count on him to be a solid starter all year long and get his first full season in the majors. So
I think he's going to be a breakout star. He's going to be huge in L.A., especially with that huge Hispanic population. I just think this kid's going to be huge, not just this year, but I think for years to come. And then you got Scott Kazmir coming back from an injury. And, he's a solid 5th starter. The fact that Scott Kazmir is a 5th starter is pretty good. I like him as a 5th starter.
He's a wily veteran. He's been around, it seems like, forever. Spent time with Tampa Bay, a little bit with Oakland. So he's been around forever, and he provides a lot of leadership and experience at that 5th spot.
Yeah, and then you got Brandon McCarthy coming back from injury. Then you got Ross Stripling, who almost threw no-hitter last year. So you got those 2 guys coming back in the backup role, so to speak. So Everything looks like it's in the Dodgers' favor to win this division again. And I think they will win it again. I do think they will make the playoffs again. The Dodgers,
you think they're going to win the division, though?
Yeah, I do.
I think the Giants will win the division.
It's tough for me I had a tough time deciding who is going to win this division because, the Dodgers have ruled the NL West for this past decade. They literally have won it, even though they haven't had much success in the playoffs as the Giants. The Dodgers have always won this division. But, it was a tough decision for me to decide who is going to win between the Dodgers and the Giants. But since we're talking about the Giants now, let's go ahead and talk about the Giants because the Giants, they made some improvements, especially in the bullpen. That was a huge problem last year.
That was the problem.
That was the only problem this team. Well, not the only problem, but that was practically a problem that cost them the series against the Cubs last year in the division round.
Even a lot of their sort of spot in the postseason in general, because remember, they had the best record at the All-Star break in baseball, and they finished in the wild card game at 87-75 because they really just collapsed in the second half of the season, primarily because of their pitching. Their starting pitching let them down a little bit, but in particular, that bullpen. Santiago Casilla, Hunter Strickland, Sergio Romo, among others, just really, really let them down last year. They blew over 30 saves as a team. They bring in Mark Melancon, which was literally gold for them. If he can stay healthy, I think he'll be fantastic. I think he's blown 10 saves in 3 years. So, yeah, if he could do that, then...
He's been one of the best closers in baseball. He doesn't get the recognition because, he doesn't have those huge strikeout numbers like some of the closers do in the league. Like the guys on the Yankees bullpen. They got huge strikeout numbers, and they're always widely talked about. Melancon I think he's been one of the most underrated relief pitchers the past couple of years because, he gets the outs, he gets the save, he gets the job done, but he just doesn't get those huge strikeout numbers. And you know what? You don't need to. All you need to do is get 3 outs. And that's what Melancon does. He gets 3 outs, and adding him to this bullpen is huge for the Giants. That was the main thing that the Giants needed to do in the offseason, and they did address that need. And I do think that the Giants could compete for the NL title because they got practically the same rotation again. You know, they got Bumgarner, Madison Bumgarner. You know how he's been a stud for the Giants. Johnny Cueto. You got Jeff Samardzija, the two biggest offseason acquisitions from last year. And you got Matt Moore, who was really good down the stretch, especially in the playoffs.
Might be the best number 4 starter in the league, honestly.
Yeah, that's a really good number 4 star. So those 4 guys in general, you can make an argument that maybe this rotation is a little bit better than the Dodgers rotation. You can make that argument possibly. And then you got Matt Cain, who's competing for that 5th starter spot. So I think if Matt Cain is solid enough, he doesn't have to be the guy that he was, earlier in his career. He doesn't have to be that guy anymore because, he's not relied upon as Bumgarner and the other guys in this rotation. But he can be a really good 5th starter for this team. He can practically be the best. He has potential to be the best 5th starter in the league. And then, you got guys in the farm system, like Ty Blanche. You got Tyler Bealey, who can take that 5th spot later in the season. But the rotation remains the same. It's just they beef up that bullpen. I do think that would be the reason why the Giants would be in the playoffs. I think this is a sure playoff team. Like, no one should get surprised this team will make the playoffs.
Barring injuries, I have to agree with you. Great depth, really good defensively. You think about Panic and Brendan Crawford and Buster Posey, all Gold Glove winners from last season. The only question mark for them is at left field. Is it going to be Jared Parker? Is it going to be Max Williamson? Pagan's not there anymore. He's still a free agent, so technically they could bring him back. But given his defensive liabilities, I don't see that happening. So
yeah, that is a huge concern, a huge question mark, especially in spring training, who, if they're going to be in the platoon situation or if one of them plays well, better than the other one in spring training. But, Jared Parker, he looks like he can be the guy right now. But, Mac Williamson looks like he has shown flashes at times. So no matter what, both those guys are probably going to be the 8th hitter in this lineup. But when you look at the overall lineup, they got Dinar Span, Brandon Belt, Buster Posey, Hunter Pence, Brandon Crawford, Eduardo Nunez, who was pretty huge until he got injured. If this team is fully healthy, this lineup can be just as good as any lineup in the league. And we saw that. We've seen what the Giants can do, especially in the World Series winning years. They play small ball, and that's just what they're good at. This team doesn't have to hit a lot of home runs. They don't have to, especially with the rotation that this team has had.
Yeah, they don't have any home run hitters. The only guy who hit over 20 last year was Brandon Belt. So, they don't have the home run ball. They do things small. They do play small ball, and they rely heavily on their pitching. That's the one thing I'd maybe look to add. We've talked about McCutchen possibly for practically the whole offseason, maybe going there, fill a need in left field, and he could maybe flash some pop. Possibly a guy like Ryan Braun as well from Milwaukee. So have to see what they do, but that's like the one thing that's kind of holding them back in my eyes is the left field position.
And I think that's the reason why I have the Dodgers over the Giants to win in this division. They don't have those huge power hitter guys, and I think that's the one weakness this team has had. That's the one weakness they had since practically ever since Barry Bonds left. Like, they haven't had a home run guy since, and I do think they will address that need in the trade deadline. I do think Ryan Braun is a strong guy to head there, and it'd be perfect because Ryan Braun can still play the outfield, and that's one of the main concerns is the left field. You got Hunter Pence at right. He might move to center, but, you got Dinar Span at center. So I do think they're going to add a power-hitting left fielder or outfielder. They're going to try to switch it up whichever way they can, but I do think they will address that need at the trade deadline. I do think they will. All right, well, we're going to take our first break, and we're going to talk about the Colorado Rockies, and we're also going to discuss the San Diego Padres and the Arizona Diamondbacks when we get back to the Going to Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the Going to Me Concepts Baseball Podcast, and this is the National League West Division preview show. We talked about the Dodgers and the Giants in the first segment, but I got to talk about a potential breakout team. I think the Colorado Rockies, I think they can be a wild card team this year. And, when you look at this team on paper, this lineup is absolutely scary, especially at Coors Field, a hitter-friendly ballpark. You got Charlie Blackmon, you got DJ LeMahieu, who was the batting champ, who was tied for the batting title last year. Nolan Arenado, who is absolutely a superstar on this team. You got Carlos Gonzalez, Ian Desmond, who they signed this offseason. Trevor Story. You got David Dahl, who was one of their top prospects the past few years. He looks like he's going to be in the Major League roster opening day. Then you got Tony Walters at catcher, who catcher position is probably the weakest position on this team. But when you have so many hitters in different positions, I don't think it really matters. But I do think what we can agree on is this pitching rotation is not as good as the Giants and Dodgers. And that's the reason why I don't think they will win the division. But I think with this lineup alone, I do think they can be a wild card team. I think outside of John Gray, there's really no one that's really, that really speaks out to me. Tyler Chatwood, he did pretty solid last year. Chad Bettis had good stretches at times, but outside of that, no one really speaks out to me. I think John Gray has potential to be an ace for this team, but other than that, I do think this lineup alone could practically carry this team to a wild card position.
I don't know if I would go that far. In contention, yeah, maybe, but they're definitely going to be held down by their pitching, and I think this is why they really brought in Bud Black as the manager. He had so much success in turning around the Padres pitching staff a few years back. So they're hoping to do that with bringing in Bud Black as their manager, and I like the move. But the lineup's scary. You mentioned, and we all know the names, but think about when teams are going to Coors Field. They're just as capable of hitting a home run as the Rockies are. And if you can't pitch, then you're just kind of teeing it up for these other teams. So I think that's going to be the one downfall for them is, they might score 8 runs, but they also might give up 10. And that's what's going to hold them back. Contention, maybe. I still think I like the Mets better than them. They were a wild card team last year. The Giants and Dodgers, I think, will both be playoff teams. The Nationals lost a lot of key people this offseason, but they're still a good, solid team. So I think they might be in contention. Maybe they'll make some noise, but I don't know how serious I put them in as a wild card team.
Well, I didn't actually say they were going to win the wild
card.
No,
I know. I think they'll be in contention.
But I definitely will. I think they're definitely going to be in contention. I do think this is a team that is on the right track to rebuilding. But I think John Gray, he had good games last season where he had like 12 strikeouts but allowed like 6 runs. That's the type of, and those were at home. So he can pitch a lot of strikeouts, but I do think playing at that ballpark is probably going to hold this rotation back because Tyler Chatwood had a really good road record last year, but when he's at home, it wasn't the same. So I do think this team's going to be better on the road than they will be at home because, it's hard to pitch at that ballpark. But I think we can agree this lineup is pretty scary. Like, they got studs all over the place. Carlos Gonzalez, he's been, in trade talks for the past years, and their Rockies have never moved him. Trevor Story came out on fire in the past, the first 7 games. I think he had the record, actually, for the most home runs in the rookie 7 games. But potentially you got like 3 to 4 guys that can hit like 30 home runs. Like 30, you got 3 to 4 guys. Like knowing Arenado, he can hit 40.
If he stays healthy, he's hitting 30 for sure.
No, if he's healthy, I think he can hit up to 40. Carlos Gonzalez can be a guy. Desmond, I think he's going to hit around 20 home runs, but he can definitely hit around 30. Trevor Story, I do think he's going to have a huge bounce back year. He got injured last season. I think when he got injured, he had like close to 20 home runs. So he's a guy that can hit 30. And you got David Dahl, who was one of the top prospects for the past few years. I think he has the potential to hit 30, but I don't think he's going to get that this year. But, man, you got 3 to 4 guys that can hit 30 home runs, and that's pretty scary. So I do think they're going to be one of the funnest teams to watch because they're going to score. But I do think this pitching is going to hold them back. But the lineup alone, I think, will keep him in contention for a wild card spot this season.
I agree. Now let's move over, talk about the Arizona Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks last year did finish 4th in the NL West with a 69-93 record. So not the success they were looking for after they brought in people like Shelby Miller as well as Zach Greinke. But this year, I mean, it could be maybe a little bit of a bounce back year. They do have some solid pieces. Of course, at first base, Paul Goldschmidt is fantastic. They do have Greinke, which we saw in L.A. was, I mean, by far the best number 2 in the league. Just had a disappointing year. So they have a few guys there, but, I mean, it's still a work in progress for the D-backs.
Yeah, I do think the positive thing for the Diamondbacks this year is they're getting A.J. Pollock healthy, and I do think the improvement of Yasmani Tomas from last year is a positive sign. I do think Jake Lamb can be an important part of this lineup. You know, he was good at times at the third base position. So you're getting key pieces back that will be healthy. I think Pollock being healthy is huge for the Diamondbacks. You know, remember he got hurt last season in spring training, and he didn't come back until, I think, late August. But they're getting A.J. Pollock back fully healthy. And when Pollock is healthy, he's one of the top hitters in the league by far. He's a type of guy that can hit 20 home runs and get 20 stolen bases. Like, he's that type of player. So having him healthy is going to be huge for this lineup. They traded for Ketel Marte at shortstop. So they traded for him. And then they also acquired Taijuan Walker from the Mariners. So I do think those are going to be 2 guys that could contribute, but you know, they better hope that they hit on those guys because they traded for Shelby Miller last year, and he was one of the worst pitchers in baseball.
Yeah, terrible year. I mean, it looks like he's going to be their number 5 starter. I'm sure when they traded for him, they imagined him being possibly number 2, so that's quite a drop there. Yeah,
and remember that Shelby Miller actually got designated. Well, he didn't get designated for assignment, but he got assigned to AAA last year. So that's pretty bad. But speaking of the rest of the rotation, you got Zach Greinke there, who kind of fell off from his previous year in 2015 with the Dodgers. So he kind of came back down to earth a little bit. Then you got Robbie Ray, who I actually like. He was a strikeout machine at the late of the year, so he's someone that I'm looking forward to watching. I think he can be a potential breakout player. You got Taijuan Walker, who was, the Mariners had him as probably the number. They thought he was going to be a really good number 2 starter last year, number 3. But, he kind of had up and down season last year. So I do think Taijuan Walker can get a change of scenery, especially in the West. In the National League, where you don't have to face that extra hitter, can help him. You got Archie Bradley, who's been one of the top prospects for the last few years. I do think he can be really good as well. He had an up and down year in 2016, and this is a guy that they think that he can be the ace of the staff in the future. But yeah, on paper, this team looks good, but honestly, it's all about how this team really plays. It's all about how they play on the field. And I do think if they get improvement from Shelby Miller, if they get improvement from Bradley, and if Walker bounces back, and if Robbie Ray can pitch anywhere close that he did last year late in the season, I think this team could be really good, and I do think they can be on the right track to a rebuilding year. I think they're going to win more than 69 games, but I do think that this team is not as good as the Giants. They're definitely not as good as the Dodgers. I do think, the Rockies have a better lineup, and I do think they can finish 4th place again. But I do think they could possibly get better as the year goes on.
And then that takes us to our last place team in the NL West from last season, that being the San Diego Padres at 68-94. Which, have you seen what their field looks like right now? Petco Park is literally flooded.
It's a pond.
Because of all the heavy rain we've had here in California, especially SoCal, because in Southern California it is literally not built and structured for rain at all. So if it rains a couple days in a row, which in California the last, I'd say, month has been just crazy amounts of rain for what we've had the last few years, but it's just totally flooded, like literally inches above the ground. So they have a lot of work to do before the season starts, about a month from now. But not just with their field, but definitely their team, because this is by far, no disrespect, one of the worst teams in baseball.
This is the worst roster. Well, not the worst roster in the league, but I think this is the worst roster in the division. I don't think this team is ready to compete. This is the beginning of not the beginning, but it's definitely one of the starts of the rebuilding process. You can make an argument for this being the worst roster in baseball because outside of Will Myers, they really don't have any guys that can really impact the game right away. Will Myers is a guy that, he had like more than 20 home runs. He was a guy that he was an all-star last year. He had an all-star year.
I mean, every team has to have one, but
yeah, but he actually deserved to be an all-star. He had the stats to back it up. But outside of Will Myers, this team doesn't have a whole lot to get scary about. They just don't, And when you look at the rotation, I think the rotation is probably one of the worst in baseball. You can probably make a case for it being the worst in baseball with the Milwaukee Brewers and the Cincinnati Reds. So this rotation is definitely going to be the weak link of the team, but you can make an argument about the lineup being the weak link of the team. This team has a lot of holes all over the lineup and all over the rotation, so I don't think they're going to be good this year again.
No, I agree with you there. I mean, they're definitely looking for last place in the West again, no matter what exactly happens as far as how many games they win. I think they're definitely not looking too good.
Yeah, I do think there's a chance for them to win less than 68 games, but, the Padres are always one of the teams that competes well versus division opponents, so, we'll see how that goes. Well, that's going to do it for the National League West. And we're actually going to take our one more break. We're not going anywhere, guys. We're going to discuss a little bit of spring training news and a little bit of spring training in general. Yes, spring training has started. So we're going to discuss spring training when we get back to the Going to Meet Concepts baseball podcast.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the Going to Meet Concepts baseball podcast. And we talked about the National League West in general in the first two segments, but we're going to discuss spring training because baseball is getting very closer, guys. It's getting closer and closer as we speak. So we got, a whole, I think it started like last Friday,
yes,
officially.
Yes.
So, at least I think teams that play at least 4 to 6 games. But in the Cactus League, we got the Angels undefeated at 4-0. So they look like they're off to a good start there in the Cactus League. And in the Grapefruit League, you got teams like the Yankees, the Rays, the Mets on top. But
I'm not really surprised too much about the Yankees, given all those prospects they have.
Yeah.
They're literally playing every day now in the Grapefruit League and spring training, so I'm not really surprised. They'll probably finish with the best record, honestly.
Yeah, they probably will. They have so much there. I think with the White Sox, I thought, they would have probably started out hot, but, with this spring training, because, with all the prospects that the White Sox acquired, I do think they're a team to watch in the spring. But, we have a little bit of spring training news in general. David Wright looks like he's slated to miss a couple of weeks, I guess with a right shoulder injury. He will not throw a baseball for a couple of weeks, according to GM Sandy Elderson, and that's what he said on Tuesday. So, Wright was examined on Tuesday in New York, and Wright, he's a team captain of this team, but he's been constantly injured. He's not old, but he's going to get $67 million over the next 4 seasons. Remember, he had surgery last June to repair a herniated disc in his neck, so his status for opening day remains questionable. And remember, if he can't start, they got Jose Reyes as well, so they can start Jose Reyes at third base.
Yeah, he played really well since going back to the Mets last year. So.
Yeah, he did. I think that was the best thing for his career. But it looks like David Wright may not be available, beginning of the season. And, David Wright, he's 34 years old. The injuries continue to pile up. I think we're kind of seeing the end of his career here. And I think we've been saying that since last summer.
Well, I mean, he still has 4 years at least, because he's not going to retire with all that money on the table, just like A-Rod didn't do it. So... not necessarily the end of his career, but end of him being productive, I'd say yeah. Yeah,
and, it remains to be seen what the Mets do with David Wright, but David Wright's probably not going to be as productive as he used to be. And, remember, he is a team captain, so he does have a lot of morale in that locker room, so he's one of those team leaders. And I do think with him not being there may hurt the team in a way from that aspect, but... I do think the Mets are still a good, solid team, and they should compete, honestly, for the National League East. So they're one of those teams that can be a playoff team next season, or this season, I should say. But, we got to talk about your boy. Speaking of the Mets, we got to talk about your boy, Ben. Tim Tebow.
Or Tim Tebow.
Or Timothy Tebow, as you like to
There we go.
call him.
Got to get it out there.
He put on the show in batting practice on Monday. He hit 9 home runs in batting practice in his first full workout with the New York Mets. So,
yippee skippy.
Your boy he's doing well. But
he's going to take some swings, they said, too. They reported this weekend that Tebow will take some at-bats in spring training games. So, what do you think the ceiling is? Like double-A?
Probably double-A.
I think he'll probably get to single, but like the ceiling's probably double.
Okay, and... Tim Tebow did play in the Arizona Fall League this year. He struggled against top prospects on other teams. He only hit 194. He struck out 20 times in 62 at-bats.
He did hit 1 home run, though. His first pitch he saw. Remember that.
He did. So he did all that for the Scottsdale Scorpions. Man, what a name for a team. But, yeah, your boy, he put on the show in batting practice, so it remains to be seen what he does in spring training in an actual game against, other major league players and prospects. So he's someone that we are going to keep an eye on as spring training progresses. And we got one more story regarding spring training. Masahiro Tanaka, the Yankees ace, he looks like he's starting to settling in. He threw 2 hitless innings in his first spring training start. And so he looks like he's starting to settle in. Remember, Masahiro Tanaka has been one of those guys. He got brought into New York on a fat contract 2 years ago. Started out undefeated in his career. And, he did struggle the second half of the 2015 season. Last year, he was the opening day starter. And, he continues to have up and down. But, he remained productive. So, it looks like Masahiro Tanaka could be productive again. And remember, I think the Yankees are a team that could be a wild card contender. They have such a young core there, and I do think the pitching will kind of hurt them at the end of the year. But I do think if Tanaka is good, I do think the sky's the limit for the Yankees this season.
I think even without him, they just have such a good young core. Mm-hmm. I really think they're going to be this upcoming seasons. I said this last couple times on the show. Last season and before that, the Cubs, just all those young players, they really develop well. Gary Sanchez, I mean, going on what they already have, he had a fantastic second half of the season. He's going to really be relied on to do a lot here. It's the pitching that might hold him back a little bit, but the bullpen's solid. They have Chapman back, a lot of pieces. I think they'll be fun to watch. Yeah,
you remember Tanaka was actually a concern last season for the Yankees in spring training. He went under arthroscopic surgery in October in 2015 to remove a bone spur. That was a concern for the Yankees. But he looks like to be fully healthy, and he can be the ace that the Yankees signed him to be. But that's going to conclude our show. And I think next week we're going to talk about the American League West.
Yes.
I'm assuming?
Yes.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about the American League West next week. And I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in. As always, I'm Jeremiah.
And my name is Ben.
And come back next week, guys. Thank you for tuning in to Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. And you guys have a good day.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.GSMCpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.